Okay, so the last section here, essentially it's kind of like, there's a saying where it's just like, you don't want to know how the sausage is made here. All right, this is essentially kind of the sausage of government. This is how, basically what the kind of like the main overall job that Congress has to do, legislative branch has to do according to Article 1. Basically make laws, right? That's the kind of like each branch has a specific job when it comes to laws, all right? And so this section here just talks about procedure and certain kind of terms that related to how bills become laws. And I'll tell you the difference between a bill and a law. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this kind of video here from the crash course, and kind of talks a little bit about some stuff we'll talk about, and then I'll actually show the actual 1970s video, which this guy references here.
This episode of Crash Course is brought to you by Squarespace.
Hi, I'm Craig, and this is Crash Course Government and Politics, and today I've got my work cut out for me because I'm going to try to do something that every single social studies teacher in the U.S. has tried to do, even though there's a perfectly good cartoon you could just show. It's from the 70s. It's catchy. It's fun. That's right. Today we're going to learn how a bill becomes a law, but we're not going to be able to license the Schoolhouse Rock song. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a... You know what has a bill? An eagle. Okay, I think the only way we're going to possibly be able to compete with Schoolhouse Rock is to jump right into the thought bubble with our own cartoon and stop talking about Schoolhouse Rock. So let's start at the very beginning, which in this case is a congressman or a senator introducing a bill. The real beginning is when he or she has an idea for a law, and even this might come from an interest group, the executive branch, or even the constituents. But the formal process begins with the legislator introducing the bill. After its introduction, the bill is referred to a committee. Although most bills can start in either house, except for revenue bills, which must start in the House, let's imagine that our bill starts in the Senate because it's easier. Congress has the power to make rules concerning the armed forces, so let's say this is a bill about naming helicopters. Anywho, this bill would be referred to the Senate Armed Services Committee, which would then write up the bill in formal legal language, or markup, and vote on it. If the markup wins a majority in the committee, it moves to the floor of the full Senate for consideration. The Senate decides the rules for debate, how long the debate will go on, and whether or not there will be amendments. An open rule allows for amendments, and a closed rule does not. Open rules make it much less likely for bills to pass because opponents of the bill can add clauses that will make it hard for the bill's proponents to vote for. If opponents of our helicopter name bill were to add a clause repealing the Affordable Care Act or something, some supporters of the bill probably wouldn't vote for it. If a bill wins the majority of votes in the Senate, it moves on to the House. Thanks, Thought Bubble. We're going to have to go the rest of the way without fancy animation. But I could sing it. I'm not going to sing it. I'm not going to use a funny voice. The Senate version of the bill is sent to the House. The House has an extra step in that all bills, before they go out to the floor of the House, must go to the Rules Committee, which reports it out to the House. If a bill receives the majority of votes in the House, 238 or more to be exact, it passes. Yay! Now, this is important. The exact same bill has to pass both houses before it can go to the president. This almost never happens, though. Usually the second house to get the bill will want to make some changes to it, and if this happens, it will go to a conference committee, which is made up of members of both houses. The conference committee attempts to reconcile both versions of the bill and come up with a new version, sometimes called a compromise bill. Okay, so if the conference committee reaches a compromise, it then sends the bill back to both houses for a new vote. If it passes, then it's sent to the president. And then the president signs the bill, boom, done. That's the only option. Oh, no, there's two other options. Option 2 is for him to veto the bill. And we've gone through all of this for nothing. The third option is only available at the end of a congressional term. If the president neither signs nor vetoes a bill, and then in the next 10 days Congress goes out of session, the bill does not become a law. This is called a pocket veto and is only used when the president doesn't want a law to pass, but for political reasons doesn't want to veto it either. Congress can avoid this altogether by passing bills and giving them to the president before that 10-day period. If the president neither signs nor vetoes a law and Congress remains in session for more than 10 days, the bill becomes a law without the president's signature. So that's the basic process, but there is one wrinkle, or if you want to be all Madisonian about it, check on the president's power. If Congress really wanted a bill and the president has vetoed it, they can override the veto if it gets a 2/3 majority in both houses on a second vote. Then the bill becomes a law over the president's signature. Oh, snap! This is really rare, but it does happen once in a great while. The Taft-Hartley Act of 1953 passed over Truman's veto. I like to call it the Tartley Act. Shorten it. It's a portmanteau. It doesn't happen that often because if the president knows that 2/3 of the congressmen supported the bill, he won't veto it. And if Congress knows that they don't have 2/3 support, they won't try to override the veto. Nobody wants to try something and fail in public, right? Except for me, obviously, if you look at my other YouTube channel, Wheezy Waiter. So there you have it, how a bill becomes a law. I'll admit the process is a little cumbersome, but it's designed that way so that we don't get a lot of stupid or dangerous laws. Still, this doesn't quite explain why so few laws get passed. Bills have a very high mortality rate, and it's way more common for a bill not to become a law than to become one. The main reason is that there are so many places where a bill can die. The first place that a bill can die is at the murderous hands of the speaker or majority leader who refuses to refer it to committee. Then the committee can kill the bill by not voting for it at all. If they do vote and it doesn't get a majority, then the bill doesn't go to the floor and it's dead. In the Senate, the murderous leadership can kill a bill by refusing to schedule a vote on it, and any senator can filibuster the bill, which is when he or she threatens to keep debating until the bill is tabled. It's a bit more complex than that, but the filibuster rules have changed recently, so hopefully we won't have as many filibuster threats in the future. The House doesn't have a filibuster, but it does have a rules committee that can kill a bill by not creating a rule for debate. The entire House can also vote to recommit the bill to committee, which is a signal to drop the bill or change it significantly. And of course, if either house fails to give a bill a majority of votes, then it dies. This applies to compromise bills coming out of conference committees too. Even if a bill gets a majority of both houses, then there's that whole veto thing that the president can do. Remember? So there are many more ways for a bill to be killed than to become a law. These hurdles are sometimes called veto gates. I can't call them Bill Gates because that's personal. Veto gates make it very difficult for Congress to act unless there's broad agreement or the issue is uncontroversial, like naming a post office or thanking specific groups of veterans for their service, which are two things that Congress actually does pretty efficiently. Think of all the post offices that aren't named. You can't think of one, can you? Name it. You can't. Not named. Veto gates are purely procedural, which means they don't draw a lot of attention from the media. The easiest way for Congress to kill bills is to simply not vote on them, or even schedule votes for them. This way they don't have to go on record as being for or against a bill, just whether they support having a vote. And constituents rarely check up on this sort of thing. So I hope I managed to do a good job of both explaining how a bill becomes a law and why it's difficult for most bills to pass. And I hope I looked good doing it as well. This might be frustrating, but it's strangely comforting to consider that Congress and the government as a whole were designed to make it difficult to get things done. A single super powerful executive like a king can be very efficient, but also tyrannical. We don't like tyrannical around here. The founders set up these structural hurdles of the bicameral Congress and the presidential role in legislation to reduce the likelihood that authoritarian laws would pass. Congress added procedural hurdles like committees and filibusters for the same reason. You can argue that Congress has become dysfunctional, but looking at the process of lawmaking, it's hard to argue that this isn't by design. So next time someone accuses you of being difficult, you just say, I was behaving in a senatorial manner. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next episode.
All right, so this is the, this is real short, but this is the video that he was kind of referencing here, that this is how I learned how to sell when I was a kid.
Whew, you sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. But I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long week while I'm sitting in committee. But I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." And he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm going to live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be, oh, how I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time it's over.
By that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill. He signed your bill, now you're a law.
So I'm sure you've seen those, but so that was from the 70s. So my generation, that's how we learned government, basically. So again, like how a bill becomes law. What's a bill? It's just simply a proposed law. All right. And we'll talk into anybody can how not anybody, but we'll talk about how bills can be proposed and stuff like that. So you have certain bills. Bills they usually start in the House of Representatives, but they can start in the Senate, whatever. But for one in particular, what we call an appropriations bill. Any bill approving of spending money has to originate in the House of Representatives. All right, so like the current bill that's going to probably be signed into law today by President Biden on the COVID relief. That started in the House of Representatives because it's basically there's $1.9 trillion that's involved in that. All right, an act is just simply a law. All right, and so that's just kind of like easy, just kind of it's a bill that is passed. And like both videos, our kind of system is set up where there's more bills that die for various reasons than there are that are passed into acts. All right, and so ideas for bills can come from various places. They can start in congressional committees. Members of Congress who have like particular kind of what we call pet projects can introduce certain bills. The president, but he usually does that through a member of Congress. All right, but the president can kind of push for that, like like for example, this current bill, President Biden was really kind of pushing for that and that idea. The New Deal, a lot of acts of the New Deal were kind of pushed by that made through Congress were pushed by FDR. Organized groups, us, U.S. citizens, usually through basically contacting congresspersons and that. Bills though have to be introduced to each of those houses by their particular members. All right, and a lot of times you'll have these guys they'll be sponsors of bills. They'll sign on to them. Some of them that are pretty popular, they'll have a whole bunch of people that sign on to them. All right, and that they kind of add that to their resume and say, what have you done? Like in the next election, what have you done for your constituents? You can say, I co-signed this bill and this act and all this other stuff. All right, so those are the various, ways in which a lot also, and it's not going to mention really in our textbooks, a lot those special interest groups that are kind of, they lobby Congress, those are kind of for good or bad, play a kind of influence on like when a bill becomes a law or whatever. So officially, there has to be a protocol here. So officially for an introduction of a bill, introduced by a kind of a member of Congress, it has to then be published in the congressional record. All right, and so this is just essentially it's basically just keeping track of what's going on in Congress. It covers daily briefings, all right, and then what they'll have is they'll put this proposed bill. They usually have the title CR, which means congressional record, kind of put it in the congressional record. After it's kind of printed in the congressional record, then it heads to a standing committee. One of those committees, those kind of permanent committees there's 16 in the Senate, 20 in the House of Representatives. Like the big one for like money being spent usually starts out what they call the House Ways and Means Committee. All right. And so they have hearings on it. They have debates. It has to go through that committee before it goes onto the floor. Sometimes it goes to subcommittees and then back to standing committees. All right. Also, too, to let people know there's some training we call transparency. People are aware of this. The bill is added to the calendar. All right, this kind of schedules like when these bills are going to be kind of reported out of committee, when they're going to be debated, and basically the House or the Senate as a whole. So in the House of Representatives, the Speaker, as the kind of head officer, has a lot of influence. That's why the Speaker of the House, and that's second in line to the succession after vice president, is such an important position. All right. So the speaker in the House holds a lot of sway on what bills can basically make it out of committee a lot of times. And again, using majority, minority leaders and whips, that also kind of determines if there's enough votes for this bill to actually pass and stuff. All right. House Rules Committee, in the House, after kind of decided to add it to the calendar, the House Rules Committee, and it goes through kind of the committee, decides how much time will be given to debate a bill. In certain cases, there may be a way where they can kill something that where maybe they don't want to be on record for kind of supporting something that they maybe they might find detrimental to their political career. So sometimes they'll give it a real short period of time in which to debate this bill, knowing that it'll probably die in the sense it won't be kind of fully formed. All right. And then kind of committee of the whole is all members act as a large committee. That doesn't happen a whole lot. I want to say the last one last year, the the kind of the stimulus package one may have, don't quote me though, but it may have kind of went to a committee of a whole, but that doesn't happen a whole lot. So usually House Rules Committees kind of decide how much they're going to give the debate there. To conduct business, to kind of vote on a bill here, right? Both kind of houses have to have what's called a quorum. A quorum is a Latin term here. This is basically just a simple majority of members that must be present to conduct business. So for the House of Representatives, it's like half of 435, which is an odd number, but plus what? It's like 218 members of the House of Representatives have to be present to vote on a bill for it to be voted on. All right, and so at times you'll find there's something called C-SPAN, which covers government. It's on Channel 18 if you have a charter or something like that. They'll have these votes on these bills, and there won't be a whole lot of people there at some certain bills. For example, my family, I had an uncle who passed away, but he was a VA, Veterans Hospital administrator down in Gainesville, Florida. He retired. He got a wing of the hospital named after him. But to have a federal building named after somebody who was still alive at the time, you had to debate it. So he got voted on in the House of Representatives. There was the bare minimum for the kind of vote on this bill, which was just basically kind of easy to pass, But he sent us the video of it. And you see representatives just kind of walking around while they're even kind of voting. They're just kind of not matter of fact. Now other ones the kind of the current vote that we have for this kind of this new stimulus package. It was almost sure that almost all of them had to be there, all right, because it was such an important matter. So for the Senate, it's 51. You need to have 51 people there. Roll call votes, when it's when we come to the vote, in certain places, the House of Representatives, when they vote on this, for the Senate, they have a computer thing where people go yay or nay. On the House of Representatives, in the Senate, they do a voice call. All right, they do a vote call, and so they just had this bill that didn't pass on the $15 minimum wage in the Senate, and one of the senators, she's a Democrat from Arizona. She has a pretty conservative kind of constituency she has to deal with. She went up to her vote, and a lot of times you go to the person who's keeping the roll call, and she went up and just went like this. John McCain did that too when they were voting on repealing the Affordable Care Act. So you'll find out more of these people are going to start doing their thumbs up or thumbs down kind of thing. But that's percentage because there's only 100 there. They could do this. House of Representatives, they developed kind of a computer system. So and it's a little outdated as of right now, from what I understand. But that's just a simple roll call vote, and if it passes in the House, let's say, then it heads over to the Senate. All right. Now the Senate has some kind of different rules than the House, particularly when it comes to debating a bill. That has been in the news lately. There has been talk about getting rid of this. This is called the filibuster. All right. A filibuster is basically you have a certain amount of time after you vote on okay, we're going to discuss this bill. We're going to give it so many days, so many hours. And for the minority party, the party that has the less number of people in there, this is kind of a thing to basically secure that their voice is at least heard. So this is excessive talking to delay a vote. All right, it's only done in the Senate. All right, So you've had people in the past. The longest filibuster was in 1957. Did I tell you about the one guy, that President Pro Tem Strom Thurmond, who was like 100 years old when he retired? You know, he talked about this, and he talking to the machine. He referred to the mic as a machine. That's how old he was. So he was a staunch segregationist. All right, he was a Democrat, and then after the election of Richard Nixon and the Southern strategy, in which Republicans were attracting more kind of white Southerners, he switched to Republican. He filibustered the Civil Rights Act of 1957. It passed despite this. He filibustered for something like 20-something hours, I want to say maybe 26 hours. All right, took a couple bathroom breaks in there where he had somebody else kind of fill in, whatever. Read out the Bible, did all this other stuff. His goal was to basically kill this bill. One guy, Ted Cruz, tried to filibuster by reading Dr. Seuss. All right, so they do it as a way to it's like a little bit of grandstanding, you know what I mean? It's like at this time, but there's talk about this, like this current Congress, they can vote to get rid of the filibuster, but like Democrats right now, who are the majority, they're just barely majority. There's some that don't want to do it, like President Biden, who served in the Senate for a long time, doesn't want to get rid of the filibuster in fear of, if you don't have the filibuster, the minority party, majority party can just push almost anything through. So it's a little stupid, really, to tell you the truth, but it's put in there to try to basically kind of make things a little bit harder. You know, make things so it's not pushing all these laws through that may be like regrettable later. All right. To end a filibuster, you have to have a cloture vote, which is basically you got to have 3/5 of all senators to do this. So you have to have something like 64 senators to vote to end that filibuster. Say enough's enough. That's hard to do, especially in this political climate. All right. So this is something that if you happen to every once in a while, like kind of turn on the news or hear the news, something like that, this is something that's going to be talked about for the next 2 years at least, for sure, about getting rid of. The House doesn't have it though. This is only in the Senate. All right. So then let's say it goes to the Senate. Then it goes into conference committee at times when after it, like basically, let's say it goes like to the Senate committees, they determine it, and then sometimes they'll have to work out differences. Like they just had to work out the differences in this current bill here. Certain things that were kind of dropped out of there. They lowered the kind of the threshold for the like the yearly income that people are going to get that $1,400 for. So this is made up of equal number of senators and representatives who work out to kind of reach a compromise on the bill. Unfortunately, in this day and age, that compromise is just something that's few and far between. What they call bipartisanship is just we've become really kind of like basically kind of fractured in that sense. All right, but this is the idea to kind of work out differences, and so the bill is going to change over time. A lot of times, the bill that when it comes out of the House, when it comes out of like a particular standing committee in the House, it may have changed quite a bit by the time it's voted on and acted into law. Then, when it reaches the president's desk, the president, and we'll talk about this again when we get into Chapter 6, but the president has a couple of recourses. One, he signs the bill and declares it to be law. That's what's going to happen this morning. That's easy. Boom. They're going to have like a signing ceremony. They're going to have cameras there. He's going to hand the pen over to somebody. They're going to put it in a little case. Or the president could veto it, which is essentially a Latin term that means I forbid. All right. He refuses to sign. He basically stamps a veto on it. If that's the case, then it has to go back to the Congress and back to the branch of the House of Representatives where it started. All right. Now, with this, it has to go through the process again, and Congress has to have a 2/3 vote in both houses to override a veto. That is really hard. That rarely happens. All right. It's super tough to do that. So, and especially in this day and age. And again, we'll talk about this. Next chapter is basically kind of the presidency, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then there's a couple other ones. It's a little odd here. There's a little kind of formality. If he does it, so let's say the bill gets to his desk, and it's within 10 days of receiving it, and Congress is in session, but he doesn't want to sign it. He doesn't want to go on the record to sign it. And this is, again, what we call political expediency. Then it can become a law, all right? And so that rarely happens as well, all right? But that is in there. But Congress by in session meaning that they're kind of working, because a lot of times they take recesses and like kind of go for a couple of months where they're kind of off there. Or on the other hand, He gets the bill, and Congress is going to is going to go in recess within 10 days of him getting the bill, and he doesn't want to sign it, and it may be if he straight up vetoes it, it'll be like a kind of a bad look. He can just leave it be, and that's what they call a pocket veto. All right, kind of keep it in his hands there. All right, so it's a little odd. Again, the Senate kind of has that, the filibuster, which is a little bit different, but these are all kind of, these are all good right now. A lot of this stuff is playing out before us because we're going through a lot of kind of bills. The Senate has on its a lot of bills that are just dead, that haven't even been voted on. That this majority leader Mitch McConnell at the time just let be. All right. So that's the last of the notes, right? Okay. All right. Cool. So tomorrow, you guys at home, I'm gonna send you guys a worksheet. If you're with me tomorrow, I might have you guys do this project for me, just real short and stuff, and then we'll review on Friday. All right, and then you'll have all weekend to play the review game, which I'm sure you'll share with family and friends, right? Know what I'm saying? All right. See you guys at home.